The merciless Arizona sun beat down on the ancient canyon walls as Alara, her tawny coat damp with sweat, picked her way carefully through the scrub oak. At 8 months pregnant, every movement required extra effort, every step calculated to conserve her dwindling energy. The mountain lioness paused beneath the scant shade of a Palo Verde tree, her sides heaving. She never noticed the sinuous shape coiled in the shadows of the nearby rocks, a massive western diamondback rattlesnake, its scales perfectly matching the desert floor. The serpent's cold, unblinking eyes tracked Alara's every move as its forked tongue tasted her scent on the dry wind. This was no chance encounter. The rattler had been waiting, patient as only predators can be, for exactly this moment when the great cat would be at her most vulnerable. Alara's throat burned with thirst as she approached the shallow rainwater pool. The late afternoon sun glinted off the stagnant water as she lowered her head to drink, her swollen belly making the movement awkward. In that vulnerable moment, the rattler struck with terrifying speed. Its muscular body uncoiled like a whip as fangs nearly an inch long sank deep into the tender flesh of her hind leg. Alara's scream of shock and pain echoed through the canyon as she whirled to face her attacker. But the damage was done. Venom, a complex cocktail of neurotoxins and hemotoxins, already pulsed through her bloodstream. Somewhere high in the cliffs above, her lifelong mate Kova jerked awake from his midday rest at the sound. That cry wasn't the triumphant call of a hunt. It was something primal, something wrong. The massive tomcat was on his feet in an instant, his golden eyes wide with alarm. Fire seemed to spread from the puncture wounds up Alara's leg as the venom took hold. Her muscles twitched involuntarily as the neurotoxins attacked her nervous system. The lioness stumbled, her powerful legs suddenly uncoordinated and weak. Around her, the desert seemed to tilt and spin. Through the growing haze of pain, one terrible thought cut through her cubs. The 3 lives growing inside her, so close to being born, now faced death before their first breath. The rattler watched impassively from a safe distance, its rattle buzzing a grim warning. It didn't care about her pregnancy, about the generations of mountain lions that might never be. Nature's oldest law governed this moment. Kill or be killed, eat or be eaten. From the ridge above, Kova bounded toward the sounds of struggle, his powerful muscles propelling him over rocks and through brush. But venom works with cruel efficiency. Even as he raced to save her, Alara's vision began to tunnel, her breathing growing labored. An eerie silence fell over the canyon as Alara collapsed onto her side, her chest heaving. The usual sounds of the desert, the chirping of crickets, the scuttle of lizards had stilled, as if the land itself held its breath. The rattler maintained its defensive coil, its cold reptilian eyes tracking every twitch of the weakening lioness. Alara's tongue lolled from her mouth as the venom continued its deadly work, her once powerful body now nearly paralyzed. Then, a sound, the crunch of paws on gravel. Kova burst through the brush, his massive frame skidding to a halt as he took in the scene. His mate lying helpless in the dirt, the deadly serpent just feet away, ready to strike again. The tomcat's lips pulled back in a soundless snarl, revealing formidable canines. Every instinct honed by generations of evolution screamed at him to flee no sensible predator tangles with a venomous snake. But this was Alara, his companion since they were cubs, the mother of his unborn children. Alara's breathing grew more shallow as the neurotoxins attacked her diaphragm muscles. Her golden eyes, once so bright and fierce, now stared glassily at the unforgiving blue sky. Somewhere deep inside, her cubs still moved, their tiny hearts beating against all odds. Kova circled the scene, his tail lashing in agitation. The rattler tracked his every movement, its rattle maintaining a constant, ominous buzz. One more strike would finish Alara. The tomcat's muscles tensed as he calculated his options. He'd fought many battles in his 6 years, against rival males, against hungry coyote packs, even against a young black bear once. But this was different. There was no overpowering this enemy, no winning through brute strength alone. The snake's venom meant that even a victorious fight could spell a slow, agonizing death. The canyon seemed to hold its breath as Kova weighed instinct against love, survival against sacrifice. Somewhere in the distance, a red-tailed hawk cried out, its voice the only sound in the heavy silence. Kova's powerful shoulders bunched as he prepared to pounce, then hesitated. The rattler's head weaved hypnotically, its tongue flicking out to taste the air. The tomcat knew the terrible power in those fangs, had seen other animals succumb to the venom's effects. His ears flattened against his skull as conflicting impulses warred within him. Flee and survive to fight another day? Or attack and risk leaving Alara to die alone? Then a weak sound reached his ears, a barely audible whimper from his fallen mate. That sound decided it. With a sudden movement, Kova lunged not directly at the snake's deadly head, but toward its tail. His massive paw came down just behind the rattles, pinning several inches of the serpent's body to the ground. The rattler immediately coiled back on itself, its head darting toward this new threat. Kova had bought Alara seconds, maybe less. Now the real dance of death would begin. The rattler's strike was a blur of motion, its fangs glistening with fresh venom as they grazed Kova's shoulder. The tomcat recoiled with a yowl, swiping at the snake with his free front paw. Claws met scales as he scored a shallow hit along the serpent's body. The rattler recoiled, then struck again, this time sinking its fangs deep into the soft pad of Kova's paw. The big cat roared in pain, shaking his paw violently to dislodge the snake. Alara watched helplessly from where she lay, her breathing growing more ragged. Her vision swam in and out of focus, but she could see her mate was in trouble. The venom would be working on him now too, though in smaller doses. Kova staggered slightly, his movements becoming less precise. The rattler, sensing weakness, coiled tighter, preparing for another strike. The desert sun beat down mercilessly on the scene, offering no shade, no quarter. This battle would be decided quickly one way or another. Kova feinted to the left, then dodged right as the rattler struck at empty air. Seizing the momentary advantage, he pounced, his powerful jaws snapping shut just behind the snake's head, but missed by inches. The rattler twisted with surprising speed, sinking its fangs into Kova's front leg again. The tomcat yowled in pain, shaking his leg violently to dislodge the serpent. Blood dripped onto the parched earth, each drop soaking instantly into the thirsty ground. Through the growing haze of pain, Kova locked eyes with Alara. Her gaze held a silent plea, not for herself, but for the lives growing inside her. Save them, those fading golden eyes seemed to say. Kova shook his head, trying to clear the fog creeping in at the edges of his vision. He couldn't fail. Not now. Not like this. With a final surge of adrenaline, he gathered himself for what might be his last attack. The venom burned through Kova's system, making his muscles twitch and his thoughts sluggish. The rattler, sensing victory, reared up high, preparing to deliver a final, lethal strike to Alara's exposed throat. Kova's vision swam as he tried to focus, his limbs growing heavier by the second. Then a distant sound cut through the fog in his mind. The rumble of engines, human voices. The snake hesitated, its head turning slightly toward the new disturbance. It was the opening Kova needed. Summoning every ounce of strength left in his failing body, he launched himself at the rattler, his claws raking deep along its belly. The serpent writhed in agony, its defensive coil broken. With a final hiss, it retreated into the rocks, leaving a trail of blood behind. But the cost had been high. Kova's legs buckled beneath him as the venom's effects intensified. The world seemed to tilt sideways as he collapsed next to Alara, his breath coming in ragged gasps. Darkness crept in at the edges of his vision as the sound of approaching footsteps grew louder. Alara's chest rose and fell with increasingly shallow breaths as Kova lay motionless beside her. The human's footsteps crunched through the dry brush, coming closer. Travis Boone, a grizzled wildlife biologist with 20 years' experience in these canyons, froze at the sight before him. The scene told a grim story, the mountain lioness barely clinging to life, her massive mate unconscious nearby, blood and snake venom mingling in the dirt. Travis's radio crackled to life as his partner called in their position. "Vet team's 20 minutes out," the voice said. Travis's jaw tightened as he looked down at Alara. Her golden eyes met his for a brief moment, filled with pain and something that looked strangely like understanding. 20 minutes might as well be 20 hours. The lioness didn't look like she had 5 minutes left. Travis knelt in the dirt, his mind racing. Protocol said not to intervene, but sometimes rules were made. Travis Boone's calloused hands hovered uncertainly over the dying lioness, his breath catching as he took in the gravity of the situation. The veteran biologist had witnessed nature's cruelty countless times in his 58 years, but never so intimately. Alara's labored breathing created small dust clouds with each exhale, her once powerful body now racked with tremors. Travis's radio crackled again. The vet team was still 18 minutes out. His mind flashed to the photos back at camp. His late wife Sarah, taken too soon by cancer. That same helpless feeling washed over him now. The desert wind carried the coppery scent of blood as Kova twitched nearby, the tomcats breathing shallow. Protocol demanded non-interference, but Travis's weathered face hardened with determination. Sometimes the right choice wasn't the one in the manual. The rattlesnake's discarded skin fluttered against a nearby cactus like some grim victory flag. Travis's boots scuffed the dirt as he weighed his options, his arthritis protesting the prolonged kneeling. Alara's belly rose slightly, the cubs still fighting inside her. That movement decided it. With movements honed by decades of field work, Travis shrugged off his pack and withdrew his emergency kit. The antivenin was for humans, not cougars. The dosage would be a gamble. His hands shook slightly as he prepared the injection, remembering the last time he'd defied regulations. The black bear cub that hadn't made it. The canyon's shadows lengthened as the sun dipped lower, as if nature itself was holding its breath waiting for his decision. The syringe glinted in the fading light as Travis murmured words he hadn't spoken since Sarah's funeral. "Lord, guide my hands." Alara's golden eyes tracked his movements, filled with pain but no fear. Strange, Travis thought, how wild things often accepted their fate more gracefully than humans. He found the vein on his second try, the plunger depressing with a soft click. Nearby, Kova stirred weakly, a low growl rumbling in his chest. Travis froze, even weakened. The tomcat could kill him with one swipe. But the growl died as quickly as it came. The desert fell silent except for the whisper of wind through dry grasses. Somewhere high above, a red-tailed hawk circled, its shadow passing over them like a benediction. Static crackled as Travis keyed his radio again. "ETA now 15 minutes, came the tinny reply. Travis's jaw clenched. He'd done what he could, the rest was up to nature. Alara's breathing had stabilized slightly, but her pupils remained dangerously dilated. The biologist reached for his canteen, pouring precious water over the bite wounds to cleanse them. Kova watched through slitted eyes, his massive chest rising and falling rhythmically. Travis noted with concern how the tomcat's left front paw had swollen to nearly double its size. The veteran biologist sat back on his heels, wiping sweat from his brow. Funny how after all these years, the desert could still surprise him. He'd come out today to track a mountain lion, not play God to one. The antique pocket watch Sarah had given him showed 4:37 p.m. when Alara's breathing changed. Travis leaned closer, his heart pounding. The lioness's sides heaved violently, then stilled. For one terrible moment, Travis thought it was over. Then a shudder ran through Alara's body and she drew a ragged breath. Kova lifted his head weakly, his golden eyes fixed on his mate. Travis checked his watch again, 4:41. 12 minutes until the vet arrived. He'd seen enough dying animals to know the signs, the shallow breathing, the distant gaze. But he'd also witnessed miracles. The desert didn't give up its secrets easily, and neither would he. Travis positioned himself between the cougars and the setting sun, casting what shade he could with his body. Small comfort, but all he had to offer. As shadows stretched across the canyon floor, Kova gathered his remaining strength. With a grunt of effort, the massive tomcat dragged himself closer to Alara, his movements agonizingly slow. Travis held his breath as the cougar's nose came within inches of the syringe, still protruding from Alara's leg. Kova sniffed cautiously, then did something Travis would recount for years to come. The tomcat gently licked his mate's face before collapsing beside her. His body curled protectively around her swollen belly. The message was clear. If she went, he would too. Travis felt an unexpected lump in his throat. After decades studying wildlife, he thought he'd seen it all. But this was different. This was love in its purest, most savage form. The rattler's discarded skin crinkled in the growing breeze, a ghostly reminder of the battle fought. Travis studied the scene with a biologist's eye, the blood patterns, the disturbed earth, the cougar's positioning. He could almost see it unfold. Kova's initial hesitation, the calculated strikes, the desperate final lunge that had saved Alara but cost him dearly. Nature wasn't kind, but it was honest. There were no tricks here, no hidden agendas, just life and death writ large across the canyon floor. Travis's fingers itched for his camera, but some moments weren't meant to be captured. They were meant to be witnessed, remembered in the soul's quiet places. The vet team's approaching engines broke the spell, their tires crunching gravel in the distance. Travis's trained eye caught what most would miss, the single drop of venom glistening on a nearby rock where the rattler's final strike had gone wide. That millimeter's difference had saved Kova's life. The biologist shook his head in wonder. 30 years ago, he would have called it luck. Now he knew better. In nature, there were no accidents, only miracles wearing the guise of chance. The vet truck's headlights cut through the gathering dusk as it navigated the canyon trail. Travis raised an arm in greeting, then turned back to the cougars. Alara's breathing had grown more regular, though her eyes remained closed. Kova watched the approaching humans warily, but made no move to flee. Exhaustion and venom had drained even his survival instincts. They were all in this together now. The vet team's boots sent small puffs of dust into the air as they hurried forward with their gear. Travis pointed wordlessly to the bite marks on both cougars. Dr. Morales, a woman who'd seen everything in her 20 years with wildlife services, still inhaled sharply at the sight. "Christ, Travis?" she murmured, already preparing syringes of proper antivenin. The fading light made their work difficult as they cleaned wounds, administered fluids, and monitored vital signs. Travis held the 4-bag while Morales worked, his eyes never leaving Alara's belly. The cubs were still moving, a good sign. Nearby, Kova submitted to treatment with surprising calm, his golden eyes fixed on his mate. The desert night brought its first chill as the medical team worked, their headlights creating an island of light in the growing darkness. As Dr. Morales finished bandaging Alara's wounds, the lioness stirred with a soft sound that wasn't quite a growl, not quite a cry. Travis, who'd heard the death rattles of countless animals, recognized it immediately, the sound of a creature not yet willing to surrender. Kova responded instantly, dragging himself closer despite his own injuries. The vet team exchanged glances. This level of devotion was rare even among mated pairs. Morales checked Alara's pupils again, then nodded to Travis. "She's got a chance," the vet murmured. "A slim one, but—" Her voice trailed off as Kova rested his massive head against Alara's side, his breathing synchronized with hers. Travis looked away, suddenly feeling like an intruder on something sacred. The headlights cast long shadows behind the cougars as night settled over the canyon, the first stars appearing like pinpricks in the velvet sky. The battle wasn't over, but for now life had won. The emergency vehicle careened down the rocky canyon trail, its suspension groaning in protest. Inside, Dr. Elena Morales white-knuckled the dashboard while her assistant, young Jake Peterson, struggled to keep the antivenin vials from shattering. "Faster!" Elena barked, watching the GPS countdown to Travis's coordinates. Somewhere ahead, 2 magnificent creatures clung to life, and with them, the future of this canyon's fragile ecosystem. Jake's hands trembled as he prepped syringes, remembering his first day when Travis had told him, "Out here, we don't just save animals, we save entire worlds." Dust swirled behind the speeding truck as it crossed the dry riverbed. Elena checked her watch, 6:42 p.m. The golden hour's fading light would soon give way to operational darkness. Her mind raced through the protocols. Stabilize respiration, counteract neurotoxins, monitor fetal distress. In the back seat, the portable ultrasound unit slid dangerously close to the edge. Jake lunged to catch it, his wedding ring clinking against the metal casing. That sound, so human, so ordinary, seemed absurdly out of place in this life-or-death race against time. Somewhere beyond those red cliffs, a mother was dying. The truck's headlights finally illuminated the scene. Travis kneeling in the dirt, his silhouette forming a protective barrier between the Cougars and approaching darkness. Elena's medical bag hit the ground before the vehicle fully stopped. She took in the situation with one practiced glance. The lioness's shallow breathing, the tomcat's swollen paw, Travis's blood-stained shirt sleeves. "Status?" she demanded, already reaching for her stethoscope. Travis's voice cracked when he answered, "The Cubs were kicking 5 minutes ago." Elena didn't acknowledge the tears cutting through the dust on the old biologist's face. There wasn't time. As Elena worked, Travis found himself whispering the same words he'd said at Sarah's bedside years ago. The memory flashed unexpectedly vivid. The hospital's antiseptic smell replaced by desert sage, the beeping monitors by Kova's ragged breathing. Jake handed Elena instruments with quiet efficiency, but his eyes kept darting to the tomcat's impressive canines. "He won't hurt you," Travis murmured. "That's not fear you're seeing, son. That's love." The words hung in the air between them, illuminated by the truck's headlights. Some truths reveal themselves most clearly in darkness. Time stretched thin in the canyon's gathering dark. Elena's forehead glistened under her headlamp as she monitored Alara's foredrip. The ultrasound wand moved slowly over the lioness's belly, revealing shadowy movement within. Jake exhaled sharply. 3 tiny heartbeats flickered on the screen. Nearby, Kova watched the humans with an unsettling intensity, his golden eyes reflecting the light like ancient coins. No one spoke when the first contraction hit. The sudden tension in Alara's body needed no translation. Nature, it seemed, would not wait for perfect conditions. Elena's syringe plunged into the foreport, delivering a carefully calculated dose of corticosteroids. "For the cub's lungs," she explained quietly. Alara's sides heaved with another contraction, her claws digging grooves in the hard-packed earth. Travis reached instinctively to steady her, then pulled back. This was a moment that required wildness, not human intervention. Kova rose unsteadily to his feet, his swollen paw barely touching the ground. The tomcat's rumbling purr filled the canyon, a sound few humans ever heard and lived to describe. Against all odds, against all reason, life was insisting on itself. The second dose of antivenin hit Alara's bloodstream just as the first cub crowned. Elena's hands hovered uncertainly. Wildlife vets rarely played midwife. Alara's golden eyes opened briefly, focusing on some distant point beyond the circle of light. Travis followed her gaze to the canyon rim where a lone juniper stood silhouetted against the twilight sky. Somewhere in its branches an owl called once, twice. Jake crossed himself. Even Elena paused in her work. There are moments when the veil between worlds grows thin, when the desert remembers it was here long before humans named its features. Kova's sudden snarl startled everyone. The massive tomcat limped forward, his nose working the air. Elena froze, her hands still cradling the emerging cub. Travis recognized the posture immediately, not aggression, but desperate concern. "He smells the blood," Travis whispered. "Not just Alara's." The realization hit them simultaneously. Something was wrong with the birth. Elena's fingers probed gently, her face grim. "Breach," she muttered, and the second cubs tangled in the cord. Jake's flashlight beam wavered as his hands began to shake. The owl called again, closer now. Elena worked with quiet urgency, her sleeves soaked to the elbows. The first cub, a male, lay breathing weakly on the sterile pad. The second remained stubbornly lodged, its heartbeat faltering on the monitor. Kova paced restlessly, his movements stiff with pain and exhaustion. Travis found himself praying to a god he wasn't sure he believed in anymore. The desert night grew colder, their breath visible in the headlight beams. Somewhere beyond the circle of light, coyotes began their evening chorus, a sound that usually meant the end of something. Tonight, perhaps the beginning. Alara's body arched with a final, tremendous effort. The second cub emerged in a rush of fluid and blood, its tiny body limp. Elena worked furiously, clearing airways, rubbing life into still limbs. Kova nuzzled Alara's face as the lioness collapsed back, her strength spent. The third cub came more easily, its tiny mules barely audible over the wind. Travis counted heartbeats, one cub strong, one struggling, one. He met Elena's eyes across Alara's heaving flank. The vet shook her head slightly. Not all miracles happen at once. Not all stories get happy endings. But as the first cub found its way to Alara's belly, guided by some ancient instinct, Travis allowed himself to hope. The desert, after all, specialized in resurrection. The desert dawn painted the canyon walls in hues of burnt orange as Travis returned to the site, his boots kicking up puffs of dust that hung suspended in the still morning air. The medical team had left hours earlier, their tire tracks still fresh in the sand. His binoculars trembled slightly in his hands. Whether from exhaustion or anticipation, he couldn't say. The nest where they'd left the Cougar family was empty, but the ground told a story. Deep imprints where Kova had finally stood, drag marks from Alara's weakened body, and 3 sets of tiny paw prints trailing behind. A single drop of blood glistened on a rock like a ruby. Life had persisted, but at what cost? Travis's fingers fumbled with the memory card from the hidden wildlife camera. The screen flickered to life, revealing grainy night vision footage. Kova limping badly but dragging something, no, carrying something, in his jaws. The smaller shapes stumbled behind. Then the infrared caught Alara's eyes, reflecting green as she turned to face the camera for one haunting moment before vanishing into the brush. The timestamp read 3:17 a.m. Travis's breath caught. She'd been alive. They'd all been alive. But the footage also showed what his hopeful eyes had missed earlier. Kova's left front leg dangling uselessly, the third cub lagging dangerously behind its siblings. The desert gave, but it always took its due. A week later, the faintest movement caught Travis's eye, a tawny shape flowing through the junipers near Dead Horse Spring. His pulse hammered in his throat as he raised his binoculars. Alara, thinner, her coat dull with dust, but unmistakably her. She moved with deliberate care, stopping frequently to rest. Then came the cubs, too healthy, tumbling over each other in play, and a third trailing behind, its right hind leg dragging slightly. Travis's celebration died in his throat when no shadow emerged behind them. No Kova. The realization settled over him like a physical weight. The tomcat had bought their survival with his own. Some debts could only be paid in blood. The desert didn't care about miracles. As July's furnace winds scoured the canyon, Travis watched Alara's daily pilgrimage to the spring, each trip leaving her more emaciated than the last. Nursing 3 cubs demanded more calories than her weakened body could provide. The runt struggled most, its damaged leg making it easy prey for coyotes. On the 14th day, Travis broke protocol completely, placing a roadkill jackrabbit near her den. He returned at dusk to find it gone, but the hollows beneath Alara's eyes remained. That night, his campfire reflections turned bitter. August's monsoon rains arrived in a torrential downpour that flooded the arroyos. Travis nearly missed the movement through the curtain of rain, Alara leading her cubs to higher ground, the runt now keeping pace. The once struggling cub had transformed, its bad leg strengthened by necessity. As lightning split the sky, the family took shelter beneath an overhang Travis had monitored for years. Through his spotting scope, he saw what drought had hidden, fresh scratch marks on the sandstone. Kova's. This had been his shelter first. The realization struck Travis like the thunder shaking the ground. The old Tom had led them here even in death. Some bonds transcended mortality. The autumn sun revealed what the rains had washed clean. A shallow cave where Alara's cubs tumbled over sun-warmed rocks. Travis adjusted his telephoto lens, then froze. There, in the shadows behind them, a familiar silhouette stood guard. His breath left him in a rush. Not cova, just a trick of light on stone. But as he developed the photos later, the illusion persisted. Whether shadow or spirit, the presence remained. That night at camp, Travis did something he hadn't done since Sarah's passing. He raised his whiskey bottle toward the canyon and drank to absent companions. Some watchings never ended. Some loves never died. By September, Alara had reclaimed her throne. Travis's camera traps captured her teaching the cubs to hunt, the runt now the boldest of the litter. But one frame stopped his heart. The three cubs playing near a familiar juniper while a fourth, much larger shadow blurred at the edge of the frame. Travis spent 3 nights camped at the site before capturing the truth. A young male cougar, not cova but bearing his same distinctive ear notch, watching over Alara's new family. The desert cycle turned. Life found a way. As Travis packed up his gear that final morning, he realized he'd been given something rare. Not just a story of survival, but proof that even in nature's cruelty, October's chill brought the first snow dusting the canyon rim. Travis found Alara's tracks first, deep and sure, no trace of her earlier weakness. Then the blood trail, fresh. His stomach dropped until he found the source. A massive mule deer buck, its throat torn clean. The scene told the triumphant story. Drag marks showing Alara's initial struggle, then cub prints joining the effort. And something else, larger paw prints overlapping theirs, coming and going. Travis smiled for the first time in months. The young male had joined the hunt. The desert's ledger balanced in mysterious ways. Taking cova, sending this new protector. He left the kill site undisturbed. Some feasts were sacred. The last photo Travis took that season showed all 3 cubs grown nearly to adulthood. Their faces turned toward some unseen signal. The young male, now a constant presence, watched from the ridge above. Alara stood apart, her gaze fixed on the horizon where new canyons unfolded. Travis knew what came next, the inevitable parting, the cubs dispersing to claim their own territories. He lowered his camera, leaving the moment unrecorded. Some goodbyes needed no witnesses. As he hiked out, a sudden movement made him turn. A shadow detached itself from the cliffs, just a raven taking flight. But for one heartbeat, it had looked like a large cat, watching him go. Travis's final report sat unfinished on his desk, the cursor blinking beside his last sentence. We intervene because we must, but we let go because we should. Outside his window, winter's first storm gathered over the distant canyons. Somewhere out there, Alara's cubs were testing their independence. The young male would likely stay through mating season. The cycle continued. Travis closed the file, leaving it unsaved. The desert's true stories were written in tracks that vanished with the next wind, in echoes that faded before we recognized them as gifts. He turned off the light and let the darkness hold what words could not. The old biologist's hands trembled as he flipped through his field notes one last time. Coffee stains blurred the dates where he'd tracked Alara's recovery, his penciled observations fading like memories. He reached for the whiskey bottle, Sarah's favorite, and poured 2 fingers. The amber liquid caught the lamplight as he raised his glass toward the canyon beyond his window. To cova, he whispered. The drink burned going down, just like the truth. Some stories couldn't be captured in official reports. Some miracles existed only in the space between data points, in the quiet moments when nature whispered its secrets to those willing to listen. Spring rains painted the desert green when Travis's replacement found the tracks. Fresh cougar prints, 5 sets, leading toward the high country. The young biologist radioed excitedly, but Travis just smiled into the phone. Let them be, he said, staring at the photo on his wall. Alara and cubs backlit by sunrise. He didn't explain how he knew the 5th set belonged to that young male who'd appeared like a gift from the desert itself. Some patterns repeated. Some guardians never really left. The new biologist wouldn't understand, not yet. That wilderness wasn't just studied. It was felt in the bones like thunder before you hear it. The retirement party guests had all left when Travis finally said it out loud. I broke every protocol that day. The empty chairs listened without judgment. Moonlight through the windows painted silver stripes across his uniform jacket hanging by the door, the one he'd never wear again. He touched the whiskey bottle's rim, remembering how Alara's eyes had held his as the antivenin entered her veins. That look contained everything the manuals never covered. Gratitude, defiance, the ancient understanding between living things fighting to survive. Outside, a great horned owl called once, twice, as if answering his confession. The desert remembered what humans forgot. Travis found the skeleton by accident during his last hike. Sun-bleached vertebrae coiled in death as they had in life, the skull remarkably intact. He knelt, brushing sand from the rattle's 12 segments, same as the monster that had nearly killed Alara. Time and scavengers had picked it clean, but one fong remained, glinting like ivory. Travis left it undisturbed. The desert balanced its books in blood and bone, demanded payment in species he couldn't name. This was the real lesson no university taught. Survival wasn't about victory. It was about enduring long enough to see another sunrise, then another after that. The wind through junipers sounded like breathing as Travis shouldered his pack one final time. He placed a smooth river stone on the outcrop where he'd first seen Alara, his own small marker in nature's ledger. Down canyon, something moved through twilight shadows. Too large for a coyote, too fluid for bear. Travis didn't reach for his binoculars. Some gifts came only when you stopped looking. The desert would keep its secrets, just as it kept Kova's memory in the scraped marks on trees, in the cubs that carried his bloodline forward. Travis turned toward the trailhead, his boots kicking up puffs of dust that hung glowing in the sunset before settling forever. The university auditorium fell silent as Travis clicked to the final slide. Alara standing over her first successful solo kill, ribs still visible but head held high. "She taught me courage isn't the absence of fear," he told the rap students, "but the decision that something else matters more." Outside, fall leaves skittered across campus like the tumbleweeds he'd left behind. When a young woman asked why he'd risked his career, Travis smiled at the photo of Kova guarding his family. "Because the world needs more stories where love wins," he said simply. The applause lasted so long his ears rang. Later, alone with his notes, he wondered if they'd really understood. The Christmas card from Dr. Morales showed 3 collared cougars captured on a trail cam, 2 adults and a yearling with a distinctive limp. No return address, just a scrawled note. "Guess who's a grandma?" Travis hung it beside Sarah's photo, the 2 images overlapping in the morning light. He remembered Alara's desperate fight to nurse despite the venom, how her body had literally consumed itself to feed those cubs. Outside his city apartment window, a pigeon tended scraggly nestlings on the fire escape. Travis put out a bowl of water. Some loves transcended species, some instincts outlasted retirement. The urban wildlife would never know what their canyon cousins had taught him. Ice pellets ticked against Travis's nursing home window as he reread Jake's email. The runt cub had been spotted leading its own kill. The old biologist's oxygen tube fogged with each chuckle. On the bad days, when his lungs refused to cooperate, he closed his eyes and returned to that canyon. The smell of creosote after rain, the weight of a rifle never used, the exact timbre of Kova's final growl. The nurses said he muttered in his sleep about snakes and cougars. Let them wonder. Some memories kept you warm when the body failed. Outside, snow erased all tracks. But somewhere beyond the parking lot lights, the wild endured. The hospice radio played softly when Travis's breathing changed. The night nurse almost missed it. Just 3 whispered words between rattling breaths. "Alara, Kova, go." By the time she reached his bedside, Travis was smiling at something beyond the ceiling tiles. The morning shift found his hand resting on a framed photo. A younger Travis kneeling beside enormous cougar tracks in red sand. They almost missed the smaller details. The shadow beside him that looked unnaturally feline. The date scratched in the corner matching his wife's death anniversary. The administrator filed it with his effects, unaware that 300 miles west, a collared cougar lifted her head from a kill, ears pivoting toward some sound only she could hear. The memorial service ended at noon. As mourners dispersed, a young biologist lingered by Travis's favorite display, the reconstructed skeleton of a mountain lion beside a western diamondback. Something made her look up. Through the museum's glass ceiling, A hawk circled on thermal winds. She didn't notice the large paw prints in the flower bed outside, didn't hear the low huff from the nearby arroyo. The desert keeps its secrets better than people realize. Somewhere beyond the city limits, new cubs tumbled through golden grass while their mother watched from a sun-warmed ledge. The wind carried the scent of rain, of creosote, of time turning like pages in a well-loved field journal. Some stories never really end. They just change tellers.